Everyone. I'm recording this on January 17th of 2017. I had the day off of work because it snowed, and snow shuts things down in North Carolina. Anyway, I thought this would be a good day to do my list of the 10 worst films I saw in a theater in 2017. Largely because on January 17th of 2017, that was the day my life kind of went to shit, where I was thrown out of the place that I was living with my ex and another roommate, and I ended up having to crash with friends for about 6 months, so I was essentially homeless before I ended up getting a full-time job in the apartment I live in now. So, because that was the day that made 2017 a pretty shit year in my life, but also it's because of that that I probably saw even more movies in the year than I normally go to see. Because back when I was with my ex for 5 years, I would have to time when I would go to see a movie based on my part-time work schedule, as well as, time that you spend, with your significant other and all that stuff. So I still went to see a shit fucking ton of movies, as I have throughout my life. But in 2017, because I felt guilty sort of being in my friend's house and taking up their space and, being there when they didn't have their house to themselves, I just went and saw pretty much just anything, as well as because I was so, depressed and everything, I figured it was fine to just shut my brain off for 2 hours and go see almost literally everything that opened, at least for the first, 4 months of that year until I had gotten the full-time job. So, because I saw just a larger quantity of movies, I saw a lot more bad movies. Even movies that I had no interest in seeing, I sometimes went to see just to do something. So that's why in the past I've usually only done bottom 5 or the 5 worst films of the year. I've got a full list of 10 because of all of that. So that's a whole prologue for me to explain that. We'll start with the least bad of this list and move ascending to the worst. So number 10. Snowman. Alright, so this movie, before it came out, the director, who's a very talented director, he did Let the Right One In, he's done good stuff, but before the film came out, he said, I didn't have time to film between 10 and 20% of the movie, and I think that was sort of damage control. Because the movie, when the press releases or the reviews started coming out, it had a 13, a very low Rotten Tomatoes score, which was odd because the trailer for the movie was excellent. I mean, it had a really, really good trailer, so almost everyone I knew was excited to see this movie, and then the reviews tanked, and it was like, well, Michael Fassbender's a great actor. I mean, yeah, he stumbled with that shitty Assassin's Creed movie, but he's a great actor. This movie was originally going to be directed by Martin Scorsese. It was edited by Martin Scorsese's editor. It's got this talented director. What could go wrong? Well, the movie certainly feels unfinished. Now, for a movie edited by an editor who I know is really good, this is a shittily edited movie, and the only thing I can think of is there just wasn't enough footage to make this good. So, you have scenes that are just careening to other scenes without a narrative flow. The pacing is way the fuck off, where it's either way too fast or super slow. There's voiceover to transition between scenes when there's not enough coverage, or there's not a transition. The plot is very hard to follow at some points. I think it took me 15 minutes after the movie ended for me to fully understand what the killer's motivation was. Michael Fassbender's not as bad in this as he was in Assassin's Creed, and he's a very talented actor, but he needs another agent. He mostly just plays an alcoholic detective in this movie. And it's very clear that, after The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or as it's called in Sweden, Men Who Hate Women, became a big popular novel, and then both a Swedish and an American film that were very successful, that there was a lot of these Scandinavian crime novels started coming out, and The Snowman's based on book 6 of that series. And I don't know if the books are any good, but clearly they saw Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Let's jump onto this. Anytime something's successful in Hollywood or publishing or whatever, there's always going to be copycats and stuff. All those copycats of Gone Girl that are in bookstores. But I don't know. But you have Michael Fassbender as this alcoholic detective, and you have someone who's killing mothers. and sometimes they leave a snowman, but then there's Val Kilmer with his voice all crackly because he had throat cancer, and the film has to give you like a timepiece title because it cuts between his story and the present, and you don't know how they connect at first, and it's like the movie's a very interesting bad movie just to watch from a filmmaking perspective, as far as like how they tried to paper over the fact that there had to be other scenes that either built up the characters more, or explained the plot better, or created tension and suspense, or made everything just not seem so random and ridiculous. I mean, there's one scene where a guy brings like a sad woman to J.K. Simmons, who's some sort of politician who's trying to get the Winter Olympics to Oslo, and he like strips the woman so she's topless, and J.K. Simmons like takes a picture of her with his cell phone, and then he's like, "Get her out of here! What the hell are you thinking?" It's like, "What? You took a picture of her tits, and what was going on?" Eventually, everything kind of, sort of makes sense. Like, there's enough of the movie present for you to get what the plot was, but it just careens from nowhere. And then the ending is anticlimactic as hell. Like, the killer like falls into ice, and that's the end. Okay. I'd recommend seeing it just to see like how an unfinished film how they can try and save it, but it's a lost cause. It's so, because the elements of a really good movie are there and you can tell it, but I mean there's like identical twins in it. The story's fucking bonkers at times, and I don't know how close it is to the book, but between the shitty editing and the weird pace and the anticlimax and the story that should be simple but is a little hard to follow, and the movie is a very interesting mess. It's a horrible movie. You should watch it. Unforgettable. Look, there's not much to say about this movie. It's Katherine Heigl, it's Rosario Dawson, she's dating Katherine Heigl's ex-husband, they have a kid. It's one of those, Roger Ebert used to call them fatal basic movies, kind of like an erotic thriller. This one is basically just an R-rated Lifetime TV movie that happened to be shown on the big screen. There's some scenes that are very boring, there's other scenes that are so bad that they're good in a laughable sense. So parts of it are enjoyable, but it's by no means a good movie. Katherine Heigl pretty much plays like the public's perception of who Katherine Heigl in real life is after, you know, all of her stuff with Grey's Anatomy and Knocked Up and everything. But it's just a Lifetime movie. It's got a shitty ending. It's a bad TV movie that happens to be in theaters, and despite being an R-rated erotic thriller, because we're getting a lot of PG-13 ones now, there's very little eroticism in it, or violence. I mean, if you're going to make what's essentially a Lifetime movie, but you're going to release it in theaters, at least crank up the sex and the violence to make it worth buying a ticket for instead of seeing it for free on cable. Wonder Woman. Look, I know a lot of people like this movie. I know I'm in a tiny minority in despising this, but I fucking hated Wonder Woman. It has the same ugly, washed-out, like, gunmetal gray visual palette of all these fucking Zack Snyder DC Universe movies. Gal Gadot has the acting talent of a bland Macy's department store mannequin. She is a terrible actress, and I have no idea why people like her. And it's one of these movies that thinks it's more feminist than it is, because while she's the ostensible hero of this movie, it's really the Chris Pine character who really saves the day, because he's the one who flies all the toxic gas away, whereas she's busy fighting the generic villain, Ares. Because apparently in the DC universe, Greek mythology is the one true religion. I wonder if Batman prays to Zeus. But really, a lot of the problem happens with the Wonder Woman character. The movie wants her to be extremely intelligent and knowledgeable about the world, but then it also wants her to be a fucking idiot in order to have this really unfunny fish-out-of-water comedy. So she can speak like 9,000 languages, but she doesn't know that you can't bring a sword through a revolving door and this other shit. Like, either make her a genius or make her lovably, funnily aloof, but you can't play it both ways. So that's fucking annoying. For a long time, I thought Chris Pine was a British character who just didn't have an accent, but apparently he's American working for the Brits in World War One. And I don't know, the action sequences are the same shitty action sequences in all the DC movies where it goes into super slow-mo before speeding up. It's everything that's bad about the DC movies is still present in Wonder Woman, but for some reason people like this one. And I think it's because people wanted to like it, because they've been working on a Wonder Woman movie for a long time. Joss Whedon was going to write one in like the late 90s or something. So I think, and because Marvel is dragging its ass making Ant-Man and the Wasp and a Black Widow movie, I think people just wanted to see a superhero movie with a female character in the lead, and Wonder Woman is iconic. So I think there are people who wanted that, and just to spite the MRAs and the sexists and the misogynists online, they would have liked it regardless. Kind of like how people supported the Ghostbusters remake, even though that movie was horrible. Wonder Woman is at least better than the Ghostbusters remake. But this is still a bad movie. The action is boring and horribly photographed. The special effects are awful. Aside from being ugly, they're also bad. Gal Gadot is a black hole of charisma. She has no screen presence, no acting talent, nothing. She is the most blandest leading actor I have seen in a movie in quite a long time, and I have no idea why people like her. I hated Wonder Woman, man. I really hated it. The only thing redeemable about it is maybe that they did put some extra color in it. I mean, at least Wonder Woman's uniform seems to have some like reds and stuff. But otherwise, it's a bad movie. It's as bad as these other DC movies. I have no idea why people liked it. I think it might just because people wanted to like it, so they fooled themselves into thinking it was good, but it's bad. Boss Baby. Alright, I actually fell asleep during, like, this part of, at the end of the second act and the beginning of the third act, I just drifted off, so I missed that part. I eventually got filled in from CinemaSins' video of it, but this was bad. First, for one thing, it's not funny. I mean, I may have laughed, like, 2 or 3 times during the movie, I don't remember what the jokes were, but the main problem with the movie is the movie doesn't want to decide what is real in the universe of the movie and what isn't. Like, the parents acknowledge that the boss baby's wearing a suit, but you also have the mother who's pregnant, but then the kid gets delivered by, like, taxi. But then it cuts, they have this, like, chase scene where the main kid is dragging behind the boss baby's, like, toy car, but then it cuts to the parents and they see something different than the kids are experiencing. But then it's also from the main character kid's point of view as they're older and telling it to their kid, and it's just, the movie doesn't want to tell you what is real and what is fantasy, and it sometimes contradicts itself in that one. So if the movie won't play by its own rules, then why should I care? That's one of my big things. Like, I can suspend the willing suspension of disbelief. I can suspend disbelief on just about anything if the movie at least sets it up its own rules and it plays by its own rules. But if the movie doesn't set rules, or if it sets rules and breaks its own rules, I have no fucking patience for that. So, Boss Baby, if it were funnier, maybe I could get through it, but if it doesn't play by its own rules and it's not fucking funny and I fell asleep because I was so fucking bored, it's a bad movie. Baywatch. Man, this was bad. This was a comedy I sat through. I did not laugh once. Not once during this comedy. And, you know, Hollywood, stop trying to make Zac Efron happen. It's not gonna happen. Look, I know his next movie is a drama where he's playing Ted Bundy. Maybe he has some hidden acting talent, like Adam Sandler does when he has dramas. I liked Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love and Reign Over Me. So maybe Zac Efron just needs to grow up and play an adult role and not either be like High School Musical Zac Efron or Charlie St. Cloud Zac Efron or We Are Your Friends Zac Efron. And maybe the dumb comedy doesn't work for him because the Neighbors movies are kind of crap. The Neighbors movies are still better than this movie, but I mean, this was awful. And The Rock needs a new agent. The Rock he's a talented comedian at times, and he has a lot of charisma. He's the antithesis of Gal Gadot. But lately, what is it, San Andreas? Jumanji was a decent film, but the highlight of that movie was Jack Black and Karen Gillan. The Rock was just kind of doing what he always does. In Baywatch, he's just sort of playing, he's supposed to, I guess, be a lovable kind of jerk in the movie, but it just, the movie's just not funny. I mean, watching a regular episode of Baywatch is funnier, and that's unintentional. This is attempting to be an intentional comedy and doesn't. And this is following in the wake of like the 21 and 22 Jump Street movies, where you take a very serious but cheesy TV show from the 80s or 90s, and you reboot it as a big, broad comedy with big stars, and see if with that slight parody of the source material, but not a full-on parody, and see where it works. 21 Jump Street worked well, 22 Jump Street worked well. Sometimes these things can work well. If we go back a few years ago, the Brady Bunch movie and a Very Brady sequel were also very funny, like of these kind of like half parody, half not reboots. Though the Brady Bunch movies are probably a bit more parody than these other ones. But Baywatch just didn't work. It's just not funny. None of the characters are particularly likable. I mean, there's not much I can say about it. It's a comedy. There's not a single fucking laugh in it. The Case for Christ. Alright, so I'll be fair and say that as far as these pure flicks Jesus freak movies go, The Case for Christ is better shot, it's better acted, and it's generally a better movie. Like, of all the pure flicks movies I've seen, I mean, this is better than The God's Not Dead 1 and 2, it's better than, like, War Room from the Kendrick Brothers, certainly better than Saving Christmas. So it's one of the best of these bad Christian movies. I'll give it that. It's basically trying to be like All the President's Men or Spotlight, but it's about a strawman atheist reporter who's attempting to disprove religion, but then decides that the evidence supports that Jesus was resurrected. The movie's not particularly like morally reprehensible, and it's not poorly made, and usually there's three categories of which I decide how bad a Christian movie is. Morally reprehensible, filmmaking is inept, or intellectually reprehensible. This one is only the intellectual one, because the movie basically has this reporter go to different experts, and he has some questions, and he's given shitty answers to the questions, and he either has no follow-up questions, or he just buys it hook, line, and sinker. Just one example from many, and I wrote a full-length review of this movie, so if you want a more specific breakdown of why the arguments in the movie are bullshit, you can go to my, it gets kind of defunct now because I don't have time to keep updating it, but my movie review blog, thestymie83.wordpress.com. But one example is this guy, the reporter talks to some guy, and the guy's like, are there any witnesses to the resurrection of Christ? He's like, actually, the Bible, there's like 300 witnesses or whatever. But the guy doesn't tell him that all of those witnesses are just stories in the Bible. You can't prove the Bible by pointing to another Bible story. There's no historical evidence of that whatsoever. And you see a lot of that, where people present things that aren't evidence as evidence, or things that are evidence of something completely different. Like there's an expert on like documents, and it's like, you know, this part of the Bible is like one of the oldest documents or whatever, and it's basically conflating accuracy of the content of a document with the validity of that this document is from the era that we said it's from, without the content, without any sort of comment on the content. So basically, the movie does a very shitty job of making its argument. It does a very stupid job of making its argument, but the movie assumes that the audience watching the movie is even dumber and will take the arguments at face value and then feel that their faith has more evidence for it than against it, and then they can walk out feeling intellectually superior to atheists. That's all the movie's about. There's a lot of decent actors in the movie who are wasted. Robert Forster, Faye Dunaway. It's not a horrible, horrible movie. I mean, there are plenty of these worse, like, Christian movies out, but it's not good, and intellectually it's reprehensible. I mean, if you want to make a movie about this investigation or whatever, you don't need a straw man main character who's an asshole, and treats his family like garbage, and also an alcoholic. And you don't have to do fake arguments. You can try real arguments. You're not going to get very far if you're trying to prove the resurrection of Jesus with historical empirical evidence, because there's none. But at least you could be a bit more honest about your argument, and not as bullshitty like this movie is. Beauty and the Beast. This was like the second highest grossing movie of 2017, I think, after Last Jedi. At the theater I work at, opening weekend was fucking crazy for this movie. It was constantly sold out. I fucking hated this thing. I mean, it's like, the movie pretty much is a close remake of the animated film from the early 90s, which is very good. It was the first animated film to get a Best Picture nomination before animated films had their own category. But it adds extra scenes that are unnecessary. Where the original animated film is colorful and lively and beautiful to look at, this movie's fucking ugly. It's all drab, like dark purple, dark earth tones. The main characters, the Beast and Belle, have no chemistry. They hate each other, and then their feelings for each other turn on a dime, and the movie does not sell you that. The guy who plays Gaston is completely miscast. He is way too old and grizzled for that role. That role should have been played by someone who could have been not super young, but at least younger. Channing Tatum would have knocked it out of the park. Joe Manganiello, whatever his name is. Pretty much any of the Magic Mike strippers probably would have done a better job in this role than that guy. There was a big to-do about LeFou being gay, but pretty much he's not explicitly gay, he's just kind of coded as gay, and I mean, there's dozens, if not hundreds, of old Disney characters who are coded as gay. I mean, look at Scar from The Lion King. So, I mean, it was not a big deal. The covers of the songs aren't that good. I mean, it's just really bad. And what I hate is that the movie's also kind of fucking lazy. Like, the movie is basically, what it's trying to do is to make you remember the original movie and then transplant your positive feelings of the original movie onto this one, thereby tricking you into thinking this one is good. Because it reminds you, it's like, oh, Be Our Guest, I like that song, I remember the animated movie, that was good. I'm remembering that, and I'm having fun remembering that, so therefore this movie must be good. No, this movie's a parasite. This movie is sucking your good feelings about the original movie and fooling you into thinking this one is good. But it's fucking shit. And it's really bad. It's visually ugly. The actors are all pretty much bland or by the motion or miscast. The songs are passable to bad covers of the original animated one. It's just not good. It adds things that don't need to be added. The humor doesn't work. The love story doesn't work. The CGI in the Beast, even though it's mo-capped, is fucking awful. I watched the movie sometimes pissed, sometimes bored, but mostly I just felt that it was lazy and cynical, and it was just Disney being like, here's something that will make you remember something good, because we don't have to try. All we'll do is sell you you pay again for the memory of the movie you already have on video. You'll be too stupid to realize this movie sucks because you'll be remembering the other one. You'll transplant your happiness and we'll collect hundreds of millions of dollars. Congratulations, Disney stole your fucking money. It's a shitty fucking movie. The Dark Tower. Of all the movies I saw in 2017, The Dark Tower probably pissed me off more than any of the other ones. There's two other movies I saw that I think were worse. That's why this one's number 3, but none of them pissed me off as much as The Dark Tower did. Because you take this series of really great novels that mix horror, they mix fantasy, sci-fi, you get these really great characters, you tie in the entire, like, Stephen King universe into this. It has probably one of the most haunting and depressing but perfect endings I've ever read for a series like this. It is, you know, it's pretty cliche to call it Stephen King's masterpiece, but the Dark Tower books are excellent. And the movie we got fucking shits on all over that. It makes the most simplistic, easy, disrespectful, throwing in references as cheap ways to try and buy your like. It focuses on the wrong main character. It's cheap looking. It's just fucking horrible. It is like, fuck the filmmakers and anyone involved in this movie. Like, the climactic ending is a ugly sound and light show with Matthew McConaughey with a horrible tan, moving his arms weirdly so that fake digital glass can fly. Idris Elba is not doing anything. The movie focuses on Jake for some reason, so we spend like 40 minutes with him, and I don't care. You don't understand why there's Gunslinger. It does a horrible job of painting the universe. The creatures there's no joy, or there's no feeling, there's no depth. There's a stupid, like, light beam that comes out of Jake's head. It takes everything that was smart and interesting about the books and makes it simplistic and boring or laughably bad sometimes, and just fucking awful. It feels like the bad Asylum Sci-Fi Channel movie ripoff of a Dark Tower movie. It does not feel like an official, released in theaters, liked by the author Dark Tower movie. Everything about the movie screams from the makers of Sharknado. Maybe not as purposefully ridiculous, but it's really fucking bad. And the fact that this is probably the only Dark Tower movie we're gonna get in any reason for a long time, because to adapt these books would be very expensive. I mean, other people have tried. Ron Howard, and I was hoping Ron Howard's version wouldn't be made, because Ron Howard isn't exactly the best director. I like Apollo 13, I like a couple of other movies, but he's pretty much a bland, generic studio director. So for him to have The Dark Tower, wasn't happy with it. J.J. Abrams was going to work on it, and he's the guy who fucking ruined Star Wars. So, I mean, the people who have been lined up to make it, I was glad that they didn't get to do it, because they would have fucked it up. But I can't imagine they would have fucked it up as much as this movie got fucked up. I mean, what the fuck? This was fucking awful. And basically, it's now ruined any adaptation of The Dark Tower for at least 10 years. I don't think anyone's going to try and touch this property for a decade. And, maybe it would work better as a Netflix or HBO series to adapt the whole thing rather than doing theatrical films, and I understand that, even though I'd love to see a series of movies, but with the budget and the R rating and to be faithful, it's just probably not going to happen. So, but the answer to doing that wasn't to make a barely 90-minute PG-13 Sci-Fi Channel movie, throw it up on the screen, and hope that people like it so that they can make spin-offs and sequels. This was so fucking disrespectful to the source material. This was fucking awful. Any fan of the books would want to grab the director and shit down his throat for making this. It's like, if you filmed this script based on those books, go back to the drawing board. You shouldn't have even entered production on this. So anyway, Sony lost a lot of fucking money on it, and they fucking deserve it. Fuck them for greenlighting this script for this movie. It was really awful, and I walked out of the movie fuming. I was so fucking angry. When the movie started, through the first act, I'm like, alright, well, it's obviously gonna suck, but maybe it'll have a couple joys here and there. But, by the time we get to the third act and Matthew McConaughey's doing this weird, I was like, And then that ending where they're, eating at a hot dog stand, and Roland's like, yeah, you want to join with me, gunslinger? It was cheesy, Full House ending. It's like, fuck you, movie. So I really fucking hated Dark Tower. I mean, thankfully we got a decent Stephen King movie with It later. And that was a good movie. I actually reread the book It. I actually don't think it's that good of a book. I don't think it's one of Stephen King's strongest works. But I liked what they did with the movie. I thought it was pretty cool. But Dark Tower's fucking awful. I mean, I have so much venom and vindictive hate for the Dark Tower movie. Justice League. The only thing that makes Wonder Woman look like an okay movie is the fact that it came out the same year as Justice League. Man. Alright, now, look, when Batman v Superman was rightfully derided, the studio stepped in, and it's one of those too many cooks in the pot thing where the studio was giving notes to the director, so the director compromised their own vision. Zack Snyder's original vision was probably going to be garbage anyway, but that happened. And then Zack Snyder's daughter killed herself, so he had to step away from the film. It's a horrible tragedy that happened. And then he was replaced by Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon's a guy, I like most of his work. I mean, Alien 4 didn't come out very good. But I like Buffy, I like Angel, I like Dollhouse, Dr. Horrible. I mean, if you run down to the list of the guy's filmography, Cabin in the Woods, I like the vast majority of the stuff this guy's done. So when I found out he was rewriting the script and taking over the directing reins, I thought maybe something could come out of this. I mean, he'd probably amp up the humor. I mean, I wasn't too big a fan of, Age of Ultron or anything, so I knew we weren't going to get, A-game Joss Whedon here, but I figured at least it'd be better than whatever Zack Snyder would have given us. Zack Snyder, who's given us 2 good movies and a bunch of garbage. But what we ended up getting is a movie that was a Frankenstein between Whedon's sensibilities and Snyder's sensibilities, but it still had Snyder's fucking dirt, ugly visual style. So it's like looking at the movie while they didn't have enough money to spend on lights, and they also smeared Vaseline on the lens. The special effects were obviously rushed to get this movie into theaters, so they're really bad. Like, maybe they'll fix them for the home video release. I would think they would, but the special effects were not acceptable for a theatrical release for a major film. Like, not at all. The Flash, I don't think there was a single more annoying character I saw on film than the Flash. He was, I mean, they were trying to basically do the same thing that they did with Tom Holland's Peter Parker for Spider-Man, which is make gee whiz, I'm so excited to be part of this world, but I'm a young kid kind of thing, but he's fucking annoying. Every time he said a line of dialogue, I wanted to punch him in his fucking face. That, and the actor, his face does not convey gee whiz. Like, he has the face of a school shooter. I mean, that's why he was cast in the Trouble with Harry or Henry or whatever that movie is, where he goes around and kills his classmates with a bow and arrow. Decent film. Ezra Miller. Yeah, like, Ezra Miller, his face is too angular and evil looking to be the gee whiz teen, so he's miscast in the role. But aside from that, the character is fucking annoying. Like, he is, of all the movies I saw in 2017, and I probably saw 100 easily, was the most annoying character on film. Like, I wanted to punch him every time he said a word. It was like, shut the fuck up. I hated him. Ben Affleck, he walks through the movie just looking fucking bored. He obviously does not want to be in these movies anymore. He probably never... I think he was only Batman in Dawn of Justice that Warner Brothers would fund Live by Night for him. Live by Night ended up bombing. He doesn't want to be in these movies anymore. Fine. But could he at least give something of a shit? I mean, his career was dead a couple years ago, and then he ended up making, The Town and Argo and stuff, and his career got revitalized. But, he gave better performances and shit like Paycheck and Reindeer Games, but in here, he can barely, he looks like he's still on NyQuil. Gal Gadot is still the same, can't act, bland black hole of charisma in this movie, too. So she still sucks. Jason Momoa is probably the best thing in a movie that has no good things in it. He's trying, he seems to be having fun, he's well cast in the role. I mean, that underwater scene is horrible where they put a bubble in them and he's talking to Amber Heard underwater, and it has the most generic, don't give a shit villain, Steppenwolf. It's like, and then he's going after these fucking cube MacGuffins, which are basically just the Tesseract from the Marvel movies. And you have these winged, bug creatures as his army, and this is a movie I almost fell asleep during, but didn't. But it's, and then the action sequences are just wasted. I mean, yeah, Henry Cavill wasn't allowed to shave his mustache, so he has a weird digital mouth going on. I didn't mind that much. It's like, for as horrible as Dawn of Justice was, and Dawn of Justice is worse than Justice League, at least that movie had the decency to give us an almost naked Amy Adams in a bathtub. There's nothing I can point to in Justice League that makes it worth even fast-forwarding through. The action is bad, the visual style is muddy and ugly, the actors are either horrible or bored or annoying, or bland as Cyborg. The only reason Cyborg is in this movie is to make Gal Gadot look like she has a personality. There's not a single good thing about the movie. The only reason it's not the worst movie of the year is because I saw one other movie that was worse. It is everything that is bad and wrong about big budget filmmaking. It is a fucking mess. The story is obviously Frankenstein together. The visual style and tone is Frankenstein together. The action is unexciting. It's just a bunch of digital shit punching a bunch of other digital shit that you can barely see. Nobody seems to want to be in the movie. No one wanted to be in the fucking audience of the movie. It has no reason to exist except for Warner Brothers to lose some money and have a tax write-off. It is fucking awful. It is time for Warner Brothers to just kill the DCEU and start over from the ashes if they want these properties to ever be in good movies again. I mean, it seems like Warner Brothers only wants to make faithful, good adaptations of their comic book storylines in their animated line. I mean, for all the shit I and other people give The Killing Joke for having that horrible, first act prequel thing that shouldn't have been in there. At least the part that actually adapts the comic book part of it was really good. The Dark Knight Returns animated movie was good. I think they're going to do one for Red Sun, Doomsday, all of these, like Nightfall, maybe Death in the Family. I mean, all of these storylines that could make great live action movies. But instead they're going off and making this ugly, hard to watch, boring, horribly acted, visually disgusting piece of shit. Fuck Warner Brothers. Just stop this. Stop it. God damn it. It's fucking awful. Alright, the worst movie of 2017 should come as no surprise if you watch my other videos. It's Kevin Sorbo's Let There Be Light. A movie that I saw in a theater alone to myself. It was a 10-something show. I got out at midnight. I got home a little after 1 a.m. and I had to record a 46 minute long rant about how awful it is. It is poorly shot, poorly, laughably acted. The humor fails. And the main character is just another strawman atheist. It's basically Kevin Sorbo replaying his role from God's Not Dead. A few good actors like Daniel Roebuck are completely wasted in it. Kevin Sorbo cast his own unable-to-act children in it. The ending is ludicrous, where someone dies and everyone's happy. Sean Hannity's the fucking hero of the movie, and the movie came out a week before he defended a pedophile who thankfully lost a Senate seat. The whole concept of the movies, like the third act where people hold up their cell phones so that the lights can be seen from space, is fucking ludicrous. It has this horrible, like, running gag about him buying, like, late-night QVC mops and trying to pawn them off that doesn't work no matter how many times the movie tries to hammer it into the ground. It's not necessarily morally reprehensible, even though it has a shitty message. It's extremely poorly made and poorly acted. It is not of a professional quality. I've seen better movies from amateur YouTubers. I'm pretty sure that I can go outside my door right now with this camera and have me be the only actor in some movie about me, like, walking down my parking lot, and it would still be a better looking movie than Let There Be Light. I'm not going to talk too much about it because there's another 40-something minute video you can watch if you want to hear me rant about it, and thankfully my brain has started to forget parts of it. But it was the worst film of 2017. It is a movie so bad that Justice League is not the worst movie. It is so bad that Dark Tower is not the worst movie. So, that's my list. That was the 10 worst films I saw of 2017. Which isn't to say that I didn't see other bad movies. I mean, like, off the top of my head, I can think Happy Death Day sucked, and there's a bunch of other movies that sucked. They just didn't suck as much as the movies on here. At least Snowman and Unforgettable are kind of worth seeing. One, because it's an interesting look at a failed film, and another because it has some laughably bad, enjoyable moments. The rest of this list, just forget about them. It's the Blu-rays they're on deserve to be coasters. And not even coasters for a good beverage. They deserve to be coasters for gross coconut water or something. So I don't know how long it's going to be, depending on my schedule and time, but I'd like to do a 10 or so best films of 2017 list soon. I'm just waiting to see one more movie before I make my final decision, and that's Phantom Thread, because that opens tomorrow night. And I don't know if it'll make the list. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. And then at that point, I'll be able to film that list, which I'm hoping to do this weekend and have it up sometime after that. Thanks for watching, and let's hope 2018 has some better movies, because 2017 was a shitty year in my personal life, and it was a pretty shitty year at the movies.